Hello and welcome to the very first Arbury panel talk. In honour of World EV Day, our topic of discussion today is electric vehicles. The aim is to have a frank and honest discussion about all things EV. I'm joined by a group of well-established high-voltage vehicle experts to answer those common questions and concerns you might have about taking the plunge and becoming an electric vehicle owner. My name is Scott Stenning and I'll be your host for the day. Join with me, we also have...
Hi, my name is Andy Parton and I work at Arbury Peugeot in Bromsgrove. I've been with us for 3 years now.
Hi, my name is Reece Chalk. I've been driving EV vehicles now for about 10 years. I came into Arbury in Bromsgrove to buy my second vehicle and never left. I've been with Arbury now for just over 8 years and I work at Arbury Nissan in Bromsgrove.
Hi, my name's Harvey Staff and I'm trainee sales executive at Arbury Skoda Leamington.
Brilliant, thanks everyone. We've asked our social media followers what questions they have about electric vehicle ownership. And we'll start off with the two most common questions. So, range. People are understandably worried about the distance that they can travel in an EV vehicle. What can you do if you're worried about travelling on a longer journey to ensure that you have power?
A lot of people, it is their main concern in owning their EV vehicles. However, if we actually look at it, most people don't realistically do 200 miles a day. In fact, most people owning electric vehicles will generally only be charging at home. So for me, it's maybe not as big an issue as you think. It's not for everyone, and some people do big miles in a day, but for most people, 80% of people, probably not really doing 200 miles a day. So range maybe doesn't come into it as much as people actually think.
But it's like your mobile phone. You plug your mobile phone in every night, you plug your EV in every night. It just becomes a natural thing. And I think when you go on holidays, like I've done plenty of holidays now in electric vehicles, you do have to plan your journey. There is a bit of planning involved. It isn't as straightforward. But with charging points now becoming more available, more companies out there offering them, Tesco's now have charging points. McDonald's, always good for me, have charging points as well. You know, you can have your McDonald's and you can charge your car and it's all ready to go for your next part of your journey. So it is becoming easier. The charging network out there, we have ZapMap, for example, that will tell you every single charger in the UK. And if you're going on a journey, you could look on that. It will also tell you which company is providing that charge. And of course, each of those companies will have their own websites as well. And they will all have a live system. So you'll be able to tell whether the charger is working and if somebody's using it before you get there. So it makes it a lot easier.
So even apps for such as a better route planner, where you can select the model of vehicle or EV vehicle you have, and it will tell you how often you should charge your vehicle on that route.
So it is a really good point. You're absolutely right. As an owner of an EV vehicle, you tend to plan the odd long trip. I mean, I'll give you an example. I went, on the first time I took a long trip in the car, I was a bit worried. Because I was going outside the range of the car. I got the missus in the car. We were going down to the south coast, like Plymouth, which is a long way from where I am. And planning that trip, we just did it the night before. We checked out what was there, used the ZapMap, a really good app, as you said. And we'd already planned that out. Decided we were going to stop at a service station halfway along the route. And I was like, fingers crossed, we'll be okay. Hit the motorway. And EV cars, to be fair, when you're at the motorway, it starts to get a little bit scary. Range does reduce quite drastically. But we pulled into the service station as planned, as the map would tell us we would get there. And when we got there, there were 6 chargers on site on the service station. 2 were free. And by the time we got a cup of coffee and a sandwich, 20 minutes later, we were back up to 150 miles range again, ready to go. And then by the time I got down to the coast, lo and behold, the hotel we were stopping at, free charging.
Fantastic.
So in fact, all weekend we had free use of the car as well. So, you know, it worked out okay, but you will become a planner.
Yeah.
You do plan stuff when you're an EV driver.
I totally agree. I mean, you know, when I first started driving an EV, my car had a 70-mile range. As I've gone through with Nissan with the Leaf and now the new Aria, you know, we have a minimum range of 250 on the Aria and a maximum of 340. And now rapid chargers have also, of course, gone up. So you can still get to your 80% in around 35 to 40 minutes because as the batteries get larger, so the power you can put into them gets larger.
Yeah,
So-
and I think I'm right in saying that as the technology's evolved, as well as charging the vehicle, you can also sort of create efficiencies with regenerative braking as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And how does that work?
I mean, it's something that you do in a normal petrol or diesel car. You know, if you go down a hill, for example, in a manual car, you put it into low gear to slow you down with an engine braking. Regeneration is the same kind of thing. You remember back to those days, I mean, you probably don't remember this, but remember those days when you used to have your bike and you had a little dynamo? You probably remember this, Andy.
I definitely do.
You know, when you're driving along, when you stop, the whole lights went off. But it's a little bit like that. It will regenerate the car. So as you back off, it will regenerate. And as you brake, it will use the energy to put it back into the battery.
And that then gets more out of your range? And
Gets more out
sometimes
of your
increase
range.
the range as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. So on to charging then. You've touched on things like ZapMap, but are there enough charging points at the moment?
Well, there's currently 42,000 charging points in the UK, and by 2030 the plan is to have 300,000 charging points in the UK, which is 5 times more than fuel pumps, because there's only 8,793 petrol stations in the whole of the UK at the moment.
Good stats. And so how do I find them? We talked about, say, ZapMap. Are there any other sort of tools that you can use to get them, or is ZapMap sort of the market leader in your opinion?
I think ZapMap is very good because it's not tied to one brand of charger.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time you can look at ZapMap and zoom out in the country and you can really do appreciate how many charging points there are. You know, you ask, is there enough? Well, there's never going to be enough, is there? I mean, we'd always like to have more, but the plan, as you say, the plan for chargers is so much more than for petrol. And with ZapMap, you can check all your charge companies. Yes, I would always recommend once you see one that you want to go to, look at that person's app or just to familiarise yourself with how you charge. But most of them now are not app-based as such. They are just simply contactless through your phone. So it's become a lot easier now. You don't have to have 15 different apps for this. It's just contactless, plug your car in, off you go.
And I guess one of the challenges is the people that potentially live in terraced houses, apartments. How do those individuals get round that hurdle?
So it's a big question. It's a big question customers ask, and the word infrastructure always comes up. I can only tell you that it is getting better. I went down to London. Now London have really got on board with this. Right? Now as I walk along London, no one parks on the drive. Everyone parks on the road. So you're off street, terraced houses. Now I walked along back of Kensington area, and I walked along Notting Hill area, and both areas they're using lampposts and they're using pop-up posts out the floor.
Okay.
So they're already all over it, and it's all down the street. I'm not talking like 1 or 2 dotted around. It seems to be all over the street. So they are investing it and they're moving forward, and I'm hoping other cities are going to be doing the same, because it's the only way forward for people with off street.
Yeah, it looks like it's also coming into a lot of major cities as well, including Brighton. And there's also the development of the overhanging charging, so it overhangs over the pavement, so no one trips over the wires, and you can charge your vehicle up like that as well. But those lamppost charging, they're becoming more popular in cities.
And I think, you know, as we see more and more low emission zones, you know, and particularly, you look at Birmingham, you know, in terms of what they're doing, I think we're going to see these things develop more and more. The technology is clearly there, and it just needs to spread across the country, doesn't it?
And I think as well, there are more and more developments now. Like many moons ago, there was a new development in the Oxford area, and it was a green town. I can't remember the name of it, but every house had a charger. And of course, with new developments now, most houses will have a charger or solar panels. And I think with developments where you've got flats and things, a lot of them now have them as well, and you pay a subscription. And I know that from a lot of customers of mine that are in a situation where they're in a flat and they would love to have a cable out their window down to their car, but it's not possible, that when they've actually spoke to the landlords and the landlords have looked into it, there is still government investment into getting that done. What that is, I'm not sure about, but obviously it does make it easier for landlords to provide that service.
And then including a service charge if you're in an apartment or a flat block.
Yeah, exactly. But obviously that service charge is not going to be the same as filling your car up with £150 worth of fuel. So it's it will be very cost effective as well. One
of the objections that we come across sometimes, and we hear on people looking at EV vehicles is about the time that it takes to charge up your vehicle compared to a petrol car. You know, obviously going to a petrol station takes you not even 5 minutes and away you go. What would you say to those people about the time it takes to charge your EV?
So I think bear in mind that, as I said, for the odd few long trips you're going to do, you would be planning it, and you would be picking out probably a super fast charger, which is like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. In most everyday charging, though, it's going to be overnight.
Yeah.
And you're going to be plugging it in overnight, regardless of whether it's 80% charge or 20% charge. It doesn't affect the battery by charging it up every night.
Yeah.
And there's lots of other benefits to it as well. Remember, not only are you charging your car overnight, but you've got fabulous things like preconditioning. I mean, if you've ever had an electric car in the winter, it's such a good thing to come out onto your drive. Everyone else is out scraping ice, and your car is already melted out at 21 degrees. Get inside your car.
With the heated steering wheel on and you're ready to go. Yeah.
You're talking lots of other benefits of charging.
And there's charging points now that put the money back into the grid, don't they? And you can sell your energy back into the grid. Am I right in saying that?
There is vehicle to grid, yes. Not all electric vehicles, older ones, are capable of it, but pretty much all of the new ones coming out are. So yes, you're right, you can do that. And of course, you've then got that building into your home now, where you can put energy from your car into your home at expensive times and then charge your car if you've got an overnight cheaper. So overall, you're recycling your energy, but you're actually saving money by doing it. And all of this is going to become more and more popular as we go forward and easier to obtain. So,
I think you're absolutely right about the time it takes to charge vehicles, because most EVs now, with the ranges that they've got, can take you on a 200, 250 mile trip. You know, you look at the trips that you do when you go and you do a 3 hour, 4 hour journey. Very rarely do you just drive 3-4 hours solidly. You will stop. You know, I've just been up to Scotland, and I did stop, and I stopped with the kids, and we were probably in the service station for 40 minutes. Now in that 40 minutes, I probably could have put 150, 170 miles in the car. So
with the Enyaq, the Skoda Enyaq, if you're going to Tesco's, let's for say example, and you're doing more than 38 minute shot, you're going to have 8% charge back in your Enyaq.
And what's that, 150, 160 miles?
Plus, I think it's 245 miles.
So there's definitely solutions out there, aren't there? And actually, it's about fitting it in, I guess, with your day-to-day life. It's not saying, right, I need to dedicate 45 minutes to charging a car. It's actually fitting it in with charging overnight, and when you go on that long journey, planning and fitting it in with the stops that you're doing.
I think even if it's something a little bit unexpected, so a journey maybe you haven't planned in advance, go bear in mind there's a lot of technology built on board. So the sat-navs have got the National's charging points in there.
Yeah.
And if you've put a route into where you're going, the car will know what range it's got left.
Yeah.
And it will tell you if you need to be visiting the nearest charging point. So all that stuff's in there. And recently, guys, I used Google Maps recently, and you can actually select your charging point type of your car.
It will show you.
And you can say, okay, Google, take me to my nearest charging point. So not just that map, it's in everything there. Even Google are all over it.
And I'm assuming that you then look at it with Apple CarPlay and things like that, and how it can integrate with some of the technology. A slightly difficult question to ask, particularly in current market, or certainly difficult question to answer, not a difficult question to ask. But how much does it add to your sort of already growing electricity bills?
Ooh, it's a nasty
That's a harsh question.
Oh, actually, it would have been an easier question if we'd done this 2 years ago. 2 years ago, when we didn't have these huge energy bills. I mean, we were recommending to people to take up cheap off-peak charging of their cars between like 12 and 4. That's 5 pence a kilowatt back then. A full charge of a Peugeot electric car would have been about £6. Of course, now it's a slightly different situation. But we're hoping this is going to continue. I mean, it can't continue, can it?
No, I mean, it is something, at the end of the day, it is a subject that we need to discuss, because it is something that's reality for everybody. And at the moment, we're going through, a stage where we're seeing it worsen rather than get better. Petrol prices have also gone up as well. Electric prices are going up. So yes, it is something you need to think about. But I think in the long term, it is still a more cost-effective vehicle, more cost-effective day to day than petrol. So even if you are looking at an increase in your electric cost, if you worked out your actual cost per mile that you're putting fuel in and electric in, it's still vastly different. I mean, at one point, as you say, Andy, it was, I'd worked it out for a customer, it was 10%. 10% of the price of what they were paying in fuel for a 200-mile journey was what they were being charged in electric. It's not that anymore. We all know that, and we wouldn't sit here and say that because that's just not the case. But it is still significantly cheaper, and I think in the long run, it is not going to continue to go this way. I think governments will step in and we'll end up, hopefully going back again. Whether it will go back again, we don't know. But I think in the long run, it's still a saving, and we have to look at it that way.
I think that's the key, isn't it? It's over a period of time, and I guess if we look at how many of our customers are buying electric vehicles on PCP and finance agreements, you put it over a 3-4 year agreement over the life of the vehicle and their ownership of it. We'd like to think, let's hope, that these electricity prices will start to soften a little bit and they'll start to realise some greater savings throughout the life of the vehicle. And there's also other compelling reasons to buy an EV that are sort of separate to just the cost saving.
Well, if we look on an average of 45 miles to the gallon of a motor vehicle and fuel costs at roughly around £1.80 a litre, £1.80 a litre, sorry, you have an annual yearly saving of £1,600, and that's at 29p kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
And based on a yearly mileage of 15,000, and there's calculators out there to do it yourself. You can set up what the kilowatt of the hour is, what the price of fuel is, tell you roughly what yearly mileage you do, and it'll tell you the savings you're having.
And that's a fairly significant increase in price per kilowatt hour from what you quoted 2 years ago.
Absolutely,
that's why I...
So, it's a good example that even at nearly 30p a kilowatt hour, we're still seeing a compelling reason to switch at 15,000 miles a year, because there is still that saving there.
I think we also have to be frank in realising there is an initial cost in the electric car that is higher.
Yeah.
And for many people, if they're not really doing that many miles, it might only be a cost neutral exercise at the end of a 3 or 4 year PCP period. However, it's not the only reason they're buying the car. And in many cases, I speak to many customers, it's not the reason they're buying the car is to make a saving. It's actually because they really want to join the electric revolution on cars. I mean, you've got to drive one. You've got to drive one to understand why they're so good.
It's the environment as well. A lot of people prefer electric vehicles because this is the way we're going in the world. We will get to that point, and a lot of people want to get on now with the environment. A lot of people now, it's because they want to do it for the environment. It is a cost saving, of course. And there's always a case, like you say, about electric vehicles being more expensive than the petrol versions. Yeah, in some cases they are, but I had a look today before we came over here, and our Leaf now, if you go for a top of the range with the largest range and all the toys as all standard, it's around 36,000. I had a look on, let's say, a website of one of our competitors that we don't do in Arbury, for a nice family-sized car, let's say, a very popular family-sized car, and to get a car of equivalent specifications was actually more money than the Leaf. Yeah. So I think we that gap where electric vehicles are more expensive than petrol has actually come down an awful lot. Yeah. And of course, you still got the zero road fund license, etc., to bear in mind. And as we tighten up, as you're saying, Scott, in cities, Birmingham obviously have done the low emission zones, but as these emission zones get tighter and tighter and tighter, eventually it will be electric vehicles only that will be able to go in there, and that's also a benefit, of course. So,
definitely. Obviously, electric cars are zero emission, which is great, and they therefore let off no fumes, no CO2 emissions, which is one of obviously the big positives from an environmental impact point of view. However, there's some questions raised about the footprint that's created by creating the batteries that go in these EVs. How would you respond to that, and what do you think to that kind of objection and comment?
Yeah, it is a tricky one because obviously we're all getting more environmentally conscious and we want to do the right things. There are some good stuff happening already. A lot of the batteries actually come out of EV cars, although they might not be good enough to run an electric car anymore. They are being reused for other resources, so off-grid places, and those places in Alaska, places in Brazil, and they're making use of these batteries and using them for light sources, things like that, which they are more than efficient enough for. So there are other things we are using them for already. And I know there's a lot of other pressure on manufacturers to do more with them as well.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, manufacturers are at the forefront of it because you're always going to have your EV skeptical people. That's what we're here today to kind of discuss and be honest and open about it. And you are correct, there is a production of batteries, like there's a production of vehicles, but the production of batteries still produce less emissions, less issues for the environment than building a petrol or diesel car. Manufacturers like Nissan, for example, in the past, even when the Leaf first came out, they were looking at recycling batteries for like hospital power backups and things like that, as they were looking at an end-of-life plan almost before the vehicle came out. And manufacturers are always going to be constantly looking at batteries and the material used within the batteries, one, to make them more efficient, to give you that range, as we were talking about, but also make them more environmentally and efficient, if you like. And I think that manufacturers are there, and as much as we would love to be able to explain everything, at the moment it is an ongoing thing. But, it's...
Yeah, there's a huge investment from the manufacturers. They're clearly under a lot of pressure, to become more EV focused, and then a lot of them have done an incredible job. So much so, that they're ahead of, I think, schedule and ahead of plan. So I think, if we look at the range that's coming into the batteries, if we look at things like regenerative braking that's been introduced, they'll also be looking at the other end in terms of how they become more carbon neutral, net zero in their production of the whole vehicle, won't they?
Well, yeah, because there's a lot of pressure on them, because by 2030 they want to stop making petrol and diesel cars, and by 2035 they want the stop of hybrid vehicles. And even if the worst case scenario, a battery was produced in China, it still produces 22% less emissions than a diesel car and 28% less than a petrol vehicle.
And it makes, manufacturers, Nissan, for example, are building a new EV factory, which is designed to be environmentally friendly. And the next version of the Leaf and our Aria will be built there. And I think there's obviously other manufacturers that will be doing the same thing. So they are doing the best that they can. It's just obviously the time to get them up and running.
Yeah, it will take time.
Yeah.
But I think they're moving pretty quickly. You look at how much things have evolved. With Nissan, we've had the Leaf since 2010.
2010,
You look at how far things have come with Nissan from a 60-mile range, through to where we are now, and the quality of that product and the range that it has come on leaps and bounds.
Yeah. And there's commitment from companies as well. I mean, we get a lot of inquiries from companies who want vans, and the range of electric vans we do now, they want to be seen as green and friendly and doing their thing. So I think it can only be something that's going to grow and grow to make use of that.
Yeah, some of these vans, even with a large payload, have ranges of 150 plus miles, don't they? Put that across a business with a fleet of 10, 15, 20 courier vans in the central London. All of a sudden, they're not paying congestion charge, they're not paying the fuel costs. It's a much more efficient way of doing the job and reducing their costs.
Let's be thankful for the improvements as well. You say I'm old. I remember the electric milk float coming down the road
with the battery at 2 miles an hour.
Moving on to the positives of electric vehicles, how are they better to drive than a conventional petrol or diesel engine?
Well, I mean, the obvious one is quieter, because you've got no combustion engine. I think when you take somebody on a test drive on an electric vehicle that's never been in one before, one, they're always a little bit concerned it's going to be like a spaceship, and two, they just don't know what to expect. And when you pull away and there's no noise, it's always it's quiet. And you know what? It is something you get used to. I think pulling away on an electric vehicle, and when you accelerate on an electric vehicle, obviously it's different because there's no engine. But when you're driving along, it's like you're driving a normal, quiet, comfortable, automatic vehicle. And of course, you've got instant torque, instant performance. It just is great. Whenever I go back to driving a petrol or diesel car now, I just think, why? Yeah, and it's just not as enjoyable to drive. So
I remember what we said about range. For most people, it's really not an issue. On a daily basis, we're doing 50 miles a day. Yeah, I'm not worrying about range. I'm going to be using my sport mode. I'm going to be using my heating. I'm going to be using my aircon. that's electric driving.
I
For
know.
me, it's just so.
It would deliver your milk quicker as well, wouldn't it?
And I think a big thing is like some people who are petrol heads really, they do like the performance side of things. And the ENIAC IV ATX Sport Plus does 6.4 seconds, 0 to 62 miles an hour, 261 brake horsepower. It's not a
You
problem.
don't need much more than that.
It's going that way, isn't it? As you were saying, you know, with your Aria, you've got they've delayed the performance model, but even the normal model, the top of the range, 306 horsepower, 5.7 seconds, as you say, you know, you've got this car sitting there, and you've got your person in your Corsa limited edition, and bye. And but you're doing it quietly and efficiently and environmentally friendly way. So
And on the flip side, for all that performance, I mean, you tend not to drive that way, do it? It makes you relax because there's no gear changes, because it's quiet and it's smooth. It's just such an easy car to drive. And if you love your music like I do, I mean, it's great. You can actually hear music properly. You know what I mean?
I think you have touched on one thing there, and it's what I do say to customers. You know, every now and again you have a stressful day. Not that it's stressful working for Arbury, but you know, every now and again we have a stressful day. We have busy times, don't we? And it's nice to get in a car that just wafts you home, and it's quiet and it's comfortable, and it actually. I'm different to you. I don't listen to music on the way home. I have my thinking time and my quiet time.
Hey, and look, I don't like visiting petrol stations, right?
No.
I visit a petrol station, I end up buying stuff I really don't want. Right? 2-for-1 chocolates, flowers for the missus, and she just asked me what have I done wrong. So I don't need to visit petrol stations, so I don't miss that. I'm quite happy not visiting them. So for me, that's a massive plus.
And how do they handle?
Oh, nicely, smooth.
Yeah.
They're very good. I mean, the majority of electric vehicles now have been designed to be an electric vehicle from the bottom up.
Yeah.
And so your battery is in the centre of the car, low, so you've got a natural low centre of gravity. So, and with a lot of them now, you know, pretty much 50-50 weight distributions as well. So you've got a car that will handle well naturally. You don't have to put massively stiff suspension on it to make it a fun car to drive, because you've got that natural you know, lower weight distribution. So yeah,
I guess
great fun.
The one difference to that, and you know this would be Peugeot, I guess, who have built their sort of strategy has been more sort of choose your powertrain in all of their models. So as a 208, you can get it in an electric, you can get it in an ICE engine.
Actually, because we get a lot of customers who are a little bit puzzled why an electric car should look odd. Why should it look unique and odd? Surely it should be the same. It should still feel like a car. And Peugeot are particularly good at that. So it's the same looking car no matter which one you buy. If you're buying petrol, manual, diesel, or an electric, it's still the same car.
Yeah.
Still looks the same, still feels the same, but it drives very different. Yeah. So I think it's how you makes you feel, electric car, isn't it? It just makes you feel different. And a lot of customers, you know, if you look back at that question I asked before, sometimes it's not always about cost. It's why do you want to drive an electric car? Because I tried one and it was fabulous. Yeah. That's why you want to drive an electric car.
Yeah, not many people are sort of are coming in and going, well, I'll compromise because I know it drives worse than an ICE car, but I'll drive an EV. It's not the way, is it? They love the drive. It's, you know, they're not making that compromise, are they? And we've obviously talked about congestion charge, you know, and avoiding congestion charge, which is a massive plus point, particularly if you're living in cities, particularly London. Obviously, we're going to see, I think, a progression, as you touched on, with Birmingham, in terms of potentially EV only, in the future going there. From a resale point of view, and we've probably seen this a bit more of this with Nissan, who have been in EV longer than sort of the likes of Peugeot and Skoda. What are we seeing with resale values? Are they good?
They're very good. I mean, to give you an example, I had a couple that both bought electric vehicles from me. And if they watch this, they probably know who they are. I'm about to deliver them a new Aria in a couple of weeks' time. But they took out a 4-year PCP with us, 2 Leafs. After a year and a half, I was able to bring them back in, put them onto a 2-year PCP with no money from themselves for less money per month.
Wow.
Now, that was, with the new Leaf had come out, they went for one straight away, and the residual values, obviously the manufacturer set them, but they were far better than they thought. But even now, I mean, if you look at a used Leaf, we will have a used Leaf that may be 2 years old, and it might be £2,500 less than a brand new one, or £3,000. Now, I do know that at the moment, you guys will know this as well, used car prices are at a premium. That's the way the world is at the moment, because of some wait times on new vehicles. But on electric vehicles now, if we ever have used Leafs in, they don't last very long. Yeah,
we're certainly seeing that demand, not just only for new EVs, but used EVs is definitely there in the marketplace, isn't it? And some of those customers that maybe are either trying to get something a little bit cheaper because they can't necessarily afford a new one, or they're not necessarily willing to wait. With some of the lead times that we're now quoting on new vehicles, but I think we're definitely seeing some strength in electric vehicle residual values, which is really positive for the market. I think the key for me with electric vehicles is every now and then a product will come to market that changes the way people think and changes the way society behaves. If you look at electric vehicles as an example, we're seeing exponential growth every single year. We're selling more and more and more. And that's driven, yes, by the government. It's been driven by incentives. It's been driven by this push for 2030. But I'll use the analogy that when Netflix started to stream, their subscription service just grew and grew and grew. And people didn't go back to Blockbuster. Hence why Blockbuster doesn't exist anymore. I think the key with EV is that the people that are buying EV aren't coming in 3 years' time and trading it in and going back into a petrol car.
No.
And that's the key bit for me. The growth is there. The growth has been driven by the market and the incentives. But the key is the people that convert never go back. A bit like once you converted to Netflix, you never went back to Blockbuster.
You never go back. And they spread good news everywhere. Right?
Oh,
anyone who's an EV owner will tell you it's a great thing. There's nothing bad to tell anyone about it.
We have people charging at the dealership, as you know, Scott, and they'll come in and they'll charge their car on a rapid charger. If somebody's coming in to look at a new electric car, inevitably they'll go and speak to those people. Best people in the world, because they're absolutely. And
everyone wants to tell you about their electric car.
And it's great. And over the years of being in Arbury and seeing electric vehicles change, the amount of people that have come in to see me and have thought maybe I'd go electric, or I've actually said to them, have you thought about electric? I don't think I can remember somebody that's come in to look at an electric car that's then bought a petrol or diesel, but there's plenty out there that have come in to buy a petrol or diesel and they've gone out with an electric car.
And that will keep going. That will keep going. But we're not going to see many people, if anyone, convert back.
No.
Which I think is an advocate for, or the greatest sort of advocate there could be for going EV. That people aren't switching back.
I would just say
the leap of faith.
I would say to anyone watching this, you've got to come and try it. Come and try the electric car out for yourself. Test drive it. That's the first thing we'll ask you. Have you test driven one? No. Let's go and try one before we do anything else. Because once you've tried it,
absolutely,
you realise what all the fuss is about.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. So, we know the EV market is building, and every manufacturer are making efforts to bring new cars to the market. The ban on new petrol and diesel cars being sold coming into effect in 2035 will accelerate this even further. So, what do you think is the future for electric vehicles?
I think the future is obviously expanding on what we have at the moment. Range, charging, they are the main two things for electric vehicles. Yes, you can have more power and all the rest of it, but it's not really about that. So I know Nissan have worked in the past with inductive charging. So you can drive on a road and you're charging as it's driving. And also inductive curbstones. So you park next to the curbstone and the curbstone lights up and your car charges. A bit like your wireless charger in your car. So I think ease of charging and ultimate range as batteries evolve and we get new materials, etc. I think the future really is those two things, the extension of the range and the ease of charging.
Which ultimately will make it more accessible to wider people in society and more commonplace, won't it?
Yeah. And I think we're just going to get such an exciting range of cars coming. That's where the investment is, and we're all looking at ways of improving what the dashboards look like and the outside of the car. It's just going to be really exciting. There's going to be some amazing looking cars. And I think the other thing is we've got to talk about is, remember we talked about infrastructure? It can only get better. It must be all over it. There must be pressures on governments and cities. Everyone must be all over it to try and make their city more friendly for electric cars, because that's where it's going to be.
Yeah.
I want to live in a city that's supporting that. That's where you want to be.
I think we've seen, with some of the suppliers that we've used, through Persia, for example, with PodPoint, we've seen how demand for their products has grown and grown and grown. They've had to massively expand their business to cope with demand, and that's a telling sign that more and more charging points are going into homes, going into cities, going into businesses, which again, makes everything more accessible, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I mean, you even see, your big petroleum companies, if you like, that BP bought out ChargeMaster, the largest at the time, the largest network in the UK. It's now BP Pulse. Shell have Shell Recharge, so they're going into their Shell station. So all of these petrol companies know that this is the future, and of course, as far as the petrol stations are concerned, as you say, they still want to sell their 2-for-1 chocolate bars. And if you're charging at a petrol station, you're still going to buy your 2-for-1. Sorry, Andy, you're still going to buy your flowers for your wife and your 2-for-1 chocolate bars. But it will become easier. And
because Shell have actually recently opened sort of the first EV dedicated charging station. Yeah. So rather than a petrol station, we'll probably still call it a petrol station out of habit, but it's actually an EV station, isn't it?
Yes.
Where you can actually just dedicate it to charging EVs. I believe that's in London, and that's potentially a sign of
it's
things
the first
to come
of many.
as well.
Yeah.
And the cost of home charge as well is worth discussing, because initially, people were looking to go to the big energy companies to get an installation of a charging point at home. However, now, things have changed. Initially, electricians weren't on board with this because they were going through a lot of legislation and paperwork they weren't willing to do. The average electrician was like, I don't want to get involved.
Yeah.
Now all that's gone. They're all over it.
Yeah.
They're jumping over it. These are easy installations. They can do it a lot cheaper than the big energy companies, certified installations.
Yeah.
And now, all those people doing charge points have also got on board and gone, well, hang a minute, we can make something look really flash, and you can have apps with it, and you can have all this. So they all blend into your brickwork and everything. There's so much more going on
I think
behind the scenes.
Then you then combine that with some of the other home solutions in solar panels, etc., etc. So that, linking that whole thing together, because you can now charge your EV directly off your solar energy and things like that. So it will only grow. The technology will only get better. So we've seen that from how far the Leaf's come from 2010, with a 60-mile range or 40-mile range, really, wasn't it? In reality, now up to a 250-mile range.
Exactly. And as you say, things will only get better. EV charging is going to only get better. It's easier, and your charge points, as you say, they now can have a red brick charge point that blends in. Yeah. That blends in. Yeah. So it makes it better on your property as well.
And they can get like underfloor cable gullies now to hide all the cables, so you don't hardly see any cables coming out. You can get all like cedar cladded and just blend in nicely, and some of it look like a little feature.
So as you say, as more competitors have entered that market, it's sort of clearly driven the price down. And that's what we're seeing, going forward. I think as well as more and more.
The other feature for EV is the generations. We're seeing a lot of younger people now coming in and asking about electrical cars. Yeah. Initially, when we first launched them, it seemed to be an older market. And people coming in and a little bit cautious, maybe don't do so many miles. Now those younger generations are on board with it. They like the exciting look of the car. They like all the technology. They love the apps which link up to the car. They want to see more of that. They want to be sitting at home and linking up to their car, even from their home.
From their smartphone.
Car before they get in.
And of course, with the weather we've had recently, pre-cooling the car as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's always nice. And of course, when you are charging, when you're out and about rapid charging, you can sit in a cooled car or a heated car, and it's actually not using any energy because it's charging at the same time. So even better.
Well, I'll draw this to a close, but once really thank you so much for your time in our first Arbury panel talk. I think it's been a really constructive and educational conversation, certainly for me as well. I don't necessarily know all the things that you guys do that deal with these things now on a day-to-day basis with our customers. So I think it's been really, really good. Really enjoyable discussion. Hopefully something that our customers and future customers looking at EVs can benefit from as well. So thank you. I do hope today's panel talk has been of interest to you and perhaps helped you in your decision whether you're ready for being an electric or hybrid vehicle owner, or if you will hold off for a number of years until you really have to make the plunge and move away from the old faithful combustion engine. Either way, Arbury Motor Group are here to help and has 13 dealerships all around the Midlands covering Peugeot, Nissan, Skoda, Seat, Citroen, Fiat and Abarth. Feel free to get in touch with us here at arbury.co.uk and we'll be happy to discuss your situation and the best vehicle for you. Thanks for watching and we'll see you soon at Arbury.